Hello, my name is Peggy Adams. I'm president of the League of Women Voters Flint area. With partners Communities First, Incorporated, and Flint Beat, we share a purpose to engage, empower, and educate local voters. We're happy to bring you a virtual forum today to help you decide which candidate for the Michigan State Legislature in your district will get your vote. Various moderators from our organizations will pose the questions to candidates. Some candidates chose not to participate. All were informed that they would need to comply with certain rules, such as refraining from comments on other persons and only taking this opportunity to tell voters about their own qualifications, priorities, and outlook. All candidates are asked the same questions and all have the same 2 minutes to answer. Thank you. We look forward to an informative discussion. Okay, let's launch our forum. Today, I'd like to introduce you to candidates John D. Cherry and Aaron Gardner, and we'll be going through a series of questions. I'm gonna just go alpha order, if that's all right. Okay, candidate Cherry, and I should mention this is for Senate District 27. So would you please provide your own introduction with a summary of what qualifications or skills you possess that'll make you an asset as a member of the Senate?
You're on mute, John.
Thank you. Apparently one of my qualifications is not unhitting the mute button. My name is John Cherry. I'm currently a state representative in the 49th House District, which covers a portion of Genesee County. Prior to that, I worked for nearly a decade at the Michigan DNR, and also my wife and I own a small business, Flint Coffee Company, where we are a wholesale coffee roaster. And I spent 4 years in the Michigan House, and in that time, I am one of the most effective House members serving. I've been able to address many issues facing the community and really make sure that we were able to deliver on items that are very important, whether that's providing municipal debt relief for many communities in Genesee County, City of Flint, City of Flushing, City of Burton, and Mount Morris Township, so that they can provide better services and fix more infrastructure locally that their citizens need, or whether that is bringing a Genesee County's first inpatient psych facility, which is going to be built on Saginaw, which we secured in the most recent budget. So right now, if you need to go to treatment, you have to go to Grand Rapids or down to Detroit. And now, once that's constructed, you can get it done right here in Genesee County. I focus a lot on issues of infrastructure, issues of economic development, and on issues of making sure that we have high quality public lands, and we have a healthy environment in the state of Michigan. And I think as we go through the forum and we talk about the issues, folks will see that I'm able to be an effective member of the legislature, and I can deliver on priorities for Genesee County.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gardner, would you provide your introduction and your qualifications?
Yes, my name is Aaron Gardner. I am in the 27th district of Genesee County, which is a huge portion of Genesee County, and I'm proud to say that I have lived in almost every portion of this county throughout my life. I've lived here from birth all on the way out to currently now, and with the exception of my 14 years in the Army, of traveling all over the world and fighting the fight to defend freedom and liberty across the world and to fight for our American principles. I think that people will find out through this forum that I too believe that I am a strong candidate for this position, and that I believe in fighting for the people. I believe in fighting for the community, and I'm strong on those same economic values and the same principles that will help bring Genesee County forward. I'm not a career politician. This is not a job for me. This is a service, a public service for myself to continue to serve the community like I have for the last 14 years in the Army. And I know that people would appreciate that service and can appreciate what I'm willing to do for the people here in Genesee County. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2. What are the 3 most pressing issues facing your district? And if elected, how will you address them? Go ahead, Candidate Cherry.
Thank you, Peggy. So the number one issue that I believe we need to address in Genesee County is securing good paying jobs and careers for folks in our community. One of the items that I've been working on and that I worked on over the past few years are putting in place new economic development tools that will allow our state to secure the future of manufacturing in Michigan. So that tool was used when we secured the new GM battery plant that is getting put into Delta Township. That allows us to transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. And we're negotiating on the redevelopment of the 356 acres that are left undeveloped at the former Buick City site, and I'm hoping that we'll have an announcement on that soon. Really, what we need to make on terms of making sure that we're providing economic opportunity for folks, we also need to make sure that they have the skill sets to take the jobs of the future. So when there was an issue with how we did workforce funding, I worked with folks across the aisle to put changes into place that allowed for expansion of those use for trade schools. And what that has resulted in is you have a school like Hamity, which has done a lot of hard work and great work, and they were able to utilize those dollars to then have the second in the state Department of Labor certified pre-apprenticeship program that allows folks to graduate from high school and walk right into apprenticeship program and working, whether that's at a unique construction trade or a variety of trades. You know, it could be at a manufacturing facility. And then finally, we really need to make sure that we are providing a solid foundation in education for our kids. And really that is starts at the very early ages. And I hope we'll get into that in a little bit in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gardner. Candidate Gardner?
Yes.
So what I should probably repeat that. What are the 3 most pressing issues facing the district, and if elected, how will you address them?
Yeah. So the first and foremost is absolutely education and the economy, and we're still facing an issue here in Michigan across the state of our infrastructure that haven't been addressed. And I think that those pressing issues have been a huge issue when I'm speaking with voters. Number one, internships and externships with the high schools and local businesses to help ignite the flame of apprenticeship and ignite the flame of skilled trades. Putting skilled trades in the schools like Hamity. Hamity is a huge success. I think more schools need to have the opportunity to give that. So providing those opportunities for schools all across the state to have those opportunities. And then to include with that, those externships and those internships as they're graduating high school. Before they're even graduating high school, they actually have on-site job experience so that when they walk off that stage and they get their diploma, they're working. When I joined the Army with 0 skill trades, and the Army actually provided me all of my trades. We shouldn't have to rely on the United States Army to teach our students and to teach our kids how to do a job and keep them here. We need them here. And then next, with the infrastructure, we have had an issue with the Flint water crisis was a horrific event here, and it's still just kind of resonating in the shadows. And we're waiting for things to be resolved. We're waiting for a resolution that will stop an emergency manager. We cannot have one person control situations like that when we need to move towards an entire team. And I think that I think doing that all together, we can really change Genesee County and reignite that flame.
Thank you. Moving to question 3. Candidate Cherry, what best practices will you employ when making decisions on behalf of the residents of this 27th district?
Great question. And really the process that I go by as a state representative is I talk to my constituents regularly. And that's why when I was having a coffee hour in Swartz Creek, my constituents came and told me about issues they were having with these private equity firms from out of state coming up and buying up communities, not only in Swartz Creek and Flint Township, but across the state, and then jacking up rents up to, doubling them at times. And as I became aware of these issues, I spend time learning about it, trying to understand all aspects. And then I work with folks, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, to find solutions to it, which is what I did there. And we have a bipartisan 7-bill package that includes folks from either side of the aisle that really looks at really reforms our manufactured housing regulation in a way that protects consumers. And I work with all the stakeholders that are present within there to try to develop the best solution that we can all agree to. That's why it passed through the Michigan House overwhelmingly, and it's had its first hearings in the Senate. So that's the way that I address things. I listen to my constituents, understand the issue, work with my fellow legislators and colleagues to see what solutions that we can employ together, and then talk to all the stakeholders who are impacted by the laws that we're trying to amend and improve, so that we can actually have a solution that folks can get behind. And that's my approach to legislating and solving those issues.
Thank you. Candidate Gardner, what would you say about that? What best practices would you take in terms of making decisions for your district?
Number one, absolutely listening to constituents, but also listening to the business owners that are in those communities as well. They experience those situations with their consumers and their customers on a regular basis, and how to actually affect the change in the business and the constituents itself. Those situations of like the affordable housing and the cost of housing in the area is horrible, and we do need to address that. And in order to address it, we need to be able to sit down with our constituents, with the business leaders in the area, and see how that we can come together and partner together, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of any kind of ideology differences, but to partner together to come to the table with a actual solution that everyone can agree with.
Okay, thank you. Question 4. Candidate Cherry, what efforts, if any, would you take as an elected leader to ensure transparency and access in government?
Great question. So I have sponsored and voted for numerous transparency measures, including financial disclosure for elected officials, legislators and the governor, attorney general. So Michigan really is behind most states when it comes to providing that level of transparency. And oftentimes in many states, if you are elected to office, you'll have to put down your various business interests and file that and have it accessible to the public, and then abstain on issues in which you have a financial stake that come before you. Michigan hasn't been that way. We should be that way. That's why I signed on to bills that would require that disclosure, and that's why I've voted for bills and amendments to our Constitution that would require that legislators do that. I think it is completely fair and should be the case that voters know our financial interests when we're voting on legislation that affects them, or why we may be abstaining on something that could affect us. Furthermore, I think it's extremely important for us to make sure that all of the political spending that occurs is fully disclosed, so that folks know who is funding ads that they may be seeing on television or on the internet while they're browsing. Really understanding who is funding campaigns and candidates is very important for voters to help make their decisions and understand why somebody might be saying something on TV. And so I support those measures as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Gardner, what efforts would you take to ensure transparency?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing is, as I mentioned, with the situation with the Flint water crisis and an emergency manager, is having a team here that is deployed and used in situations like that. So that one, partners across the line and in any political spectrum can actually hold each other accountable. And I fully expect that legislators would hold each other accountable for anything that they do, as well as the constituents. The constituents should absolutely have everything, all the tools at their hand to see all of the financials, the campaign materials, the bills that they pass and the bills that they vote for. A lot of that is a bunch of hodgepodge of tools that have to come together. That the only way for a constituent that really cares about it has to go out and really dig for it. And we absolutely need to make that a priority. I really appreciate the federal government's example with the FEC and how to find out contributions and who donates to what campaign here and there. Michigan's is lacking, to be honest. And it makes it very difficult for a constituent to find those donors and to find what those donors are actually backing and what kind of support they're using. And also, I don't appreciate the government officials that leave office just to go back into a form of policy making by advocating for certain general ideas or specific companies or interests. That's not in the public's interest to have. That's actually that's kind of backdooring the issues and the policies. And I would absolutely oppose any kind of bill that. Thank you. I think we can get back into that later.
Okay, thank you. Going to question 5. Candidate Cherry, how would you work as a state legislator to improve public safety and blight elimination in local communities?
That's a great question. So, actually, something that we've been dealing with currently, right? So, one of the issues the 27th Senate District contains communities from Mount Morris, Flushing, down to Gaines Township, over to Grand Blanc, and is centered in the city of Flint. The city of Flint has had a lot of public safety and blight issues. When you look at some of the root causes, you can work for years and years to try to address it. But in terms of providing immediate impact, some of the public safety issues that the city faces is the fact that the revenue that the city gets, a huge portion of it has been going to pay for unfunded liability from 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so they're not able to provide a public safety force that is sufficient to the size of the city. So what I break this down a little bit for you. Next year, the projection was that the city of Flint was going to have to spend $40 million to fund their unfunded liability. That's a ton of public services, whether that's public safety or roads, that could be addressed with those dollars. So what we were able to do in the most recent budget, and this is for all communities that were underfunded below 60%, we were able to put aside dollars to bring every community up to 60% funded on their unfunded liability, which means their future payments are reduced. In the city of Flint's case, it's going to be $18 to $19 million next year, as opposed to the $40 million it's projected to be. So that's nearly $20 million more that the local unit of government can spend to work on blight issues, public safety issues, and infrastructure issues. Hugely important, but it really comes down to making sure our local governments are properly funded and have the resources to address those issues.
Thank you. Candidate Gardner, the same. How would you work to improve public safety and blight elimination in local communities?
Yes. So I'm actually excited about this because I have had numerous conversations with police officers about this situation. And I think the number one thing is we need to return the benefits and the bargaining power back to the police unions, the police officers, and the departments of the municipalities. That's number one. In order for them to be able to actively pursue police officer candidates that can actually make a change and a difference in our community and have community policing, they need to be able to bargain at the table themselves. That's first and foremost. Secondly, the blight issue. As I mentioned about bringing businesses in and fighting for those internships and those externships and skill trades and education, that also means bringing businesses in that will invest in the community, businesses that will buy the area or help support some of those areas, the housing areas, and put money into it, into the infrastructure that's around it, so that they succeed as a business and we succeed as a community.
Okay, thank you. Moving to question 6. Candidate Cherry, how would you approach ensuring the local communities receive the revenue they need from the state government to fund those basic local services such as parks, recreation centers, transportation, and public safety?
Yeah, and so I answered a portion of that already on some of the work that we did to fund the unfunded liabilities that exist. Now, one thing that hasn't been addressed yet is there's also unfunded liabilities, what they call OPEB costs, which is really like oftentimes retiree healthcare. We need to put more focus on making sure we bring up the funding levels of all our local units on their OPEB, because that's another way that, it's not a straight injection of revenue, but because they're spending less of their own revenue on that unfunded liability, it essentially is more revenue going to services, going to parks, going to public safety, going to all sorts of services. So working on delivering on reducing the OPEB liabilities of local communities, I think is probably the next step. But one thing that we have done and that needs to be done, it can continue to be done in the future, is really make sure that we're increasing our support on revenue sharing. So revenue sharing, we had in the state of Michigan, the state government provides additional revenue to local units of government because their ability to tax was restricted decades and decades ago. And so what we need to make sure is that we're continuing to increase that rate above inflation because it had been held back when we had difficult economic times, really, in the Great Recession that occurred and before that. So really kind of getting up to those previous revenue sharing levels would help our local units be able to deliver those vital services that citizens expect. And that's not a 1-year type of solution. That's the type of solution where you add upon it every year to get to where you need to get.
Thank you. And Candidate Gardner, how would you approach that the funding is adequate for parks, recreation centers, transportation, and public safety?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the bringing in businesses and bringing those businesses back into the community. When General Motors left Flint, it really kind of shut us down. And I mean, I know that General Motors still has some base here in Flint, but realistically, when we shut down a lot of the factories here, we built our county around that, and we need to reestablish that. So bringing in those businesses that can help invest in those communities will help. That's I think is the biggest solution to fixing this, is a free market idea and a free market principle to bring businesses in, have the businesses invest in the communities and give them the resources they need to invest in the communities and to receive the talent base and this talent pool that we have in Genesee County. I think that Genesee County has the strongest talent pool and has the best employability, the people that are the strongest and hardest fighters in this entire state. And our businesses need that. And in order to survive as a community, in order to come out of this big issue that we've had in Flint for the last couple decades, is to have those businesses invest in us.
Thank you. Okay, and there are only 2 questions to go, gentlemen. Question 7, Candidate Cherry, what is your position on a citizen's right to make their own medical decisions?
Yeah, thank you. So Folks should be able to make their own medical decisions for themselves. I think that this question might be alluding to choice. So I want to maybe address that more directly, that I am pro-choice, and I believe a woman should have the right to make her own medical decisions for herself. My wife is an immigrant and came from a country that had a complete and total ban on abortion, like the 1931 law that exists in the state of Michigan, that depending on the results of court cases could come into effect. And I can tell you, you will see headlines every day about the young girls who are dying because they were not able to access a safe medical abortion after their family member raped them, because that's what you see when you have a complete and total ban on abortions. That's what other countries see when they have a complete and total ban on abortions. That's not what we want in the state of Michigan. We need to make sure that folks have a safe and legal way to make decisions for themselves.
Thank you. Candidate Gardner, same question. What is your position on a citizen's right to make their own medical decisions? And of course, there's more than one possibility there. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And I will be very frank and straightforward to it. The government has no business dictating what a person does with their own body. End statement. I have no desire to inflict any kind of, as a legislator, to inflict any of those mandates or rules over any individual person over their body. It is not the government's place. I myself actually walked away from a job over medical decisions, over making my own medical decisions. And it's unfortunate that we've had to have that happen throughout the state within the last couple of years. And I understand Mr. Cherry is running as making mention of the abortion issue. I am firmly against the government telling a person what they can and cannot do with their body.
Okay, thank you. Moving to question 8, why should voters consider electing you to this office? Candidate Cherry?
Thank you. So, quite frankly, I think that I will be the most effective in delivering results for Genesee County. So, Genesee County's gone through a lot of challenges over the years. And in my time in the legislature, as a challenge is presented to me or an issue is presented to me, I sit down, I learn about it, I work to find solutions to it, and many times I'm successful in finding a way to address it. That's why I've been able to work on pension relief that allows our communities to better provide services to their citizens, been able to deliver on mental health issues, increase funding for our schools, issue in the Beecher School District where they don't have a high school. We were able to put down $500,000 to jumpstart the fundraising effort that's occurring to build a new Beecher High School. A lot of those working with private dollars, but we were also able to put together a $425 million statewide fund to help local schools fund their school infrastructure, really focused on communities that have low property values and therefore can't invest in that infrastructure through a millage. Communities like Beecher. Folks come to me about issues of making sure that kids are receiving the support and development assistance that they need, and we've been able to fund improvements at places like the Sylvester Broom Center, or something as simple as a community that had a highway built through it 50 years ago and never got a sound wall. We were able to fund a sound wall for that community. That's been something that representatives in my seat have been working on for decades. I was able to actually get it funded. So quite simply, I work hard. I'm effective at delivering on the issues that people bring to me, and I think I'll be even more effective in the Michigan Senate.
Okay, and candidate Gardner, same question. Why should voters consider electing you to this office?
Since joining the Army, the one thing that the military has taught me is that you can do anything you put your mind to and that you're willing to put forth and fight for. In the political spectrum that we have, it's a rough world. And sometimes you have some of the sharpest minds coming after you. But if you're willing to put that nitty gritty fight into your step, you can absolutely make a difference and change in the community and affect it. I'm an activist. I fight for what I believe in, and I believe in the people in Genesee County. I've lived here for over 30 years. I was born and raised here, and I bounced around all across the state or all across this county. I'm not a typical politician. I'm not a politician. I am just like everybody else who woke up one day fed up with the way things were going and wanting to make a difference. And if it's one thing that I can do, it's to make that difference. And I appreciate everyone's support as we go into this fight.
Thank you. I want to thank you both for participating in this forum. I thought you both had lots of good answers, and the public is well served when people step up and they run for office. Whatever party they are with, the people are well served to hear your opinions and your positions. They need to know that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Joel.
Thank you.